Okay, everybody, say we have to give an electrifying shear. Bez Hashem. Now that you understand the Yisaidis of electricity, the Yisaidis of the Machlekes between Rosh Hashanah Zalman and the Chazon Ish, if electricity is Rabbanon, is electricity deraisa, but Halacha, it comes out simply that electricity is Aser. That we do all agree that electricity is Aser on Shabbos and on Yontif. And we saw last time that there's one aspect of the electricity when it's connected to making a fire, Dahainu, making some types of light switch, light bulbs, for example, an incandescent bulb. That's a shiloh of a deraisa. That's a shiloh of a deraisa. And I'm seeing from Dr. Ledereich that we hope that Mashiach will come. So Bez Hashem, maybe one of the shiurim we'll give will be on the tzipiyah for Mashiach and the chiyuv of waiting for Mashiach. Maybe that'll taka and the necessity of the other two shiurim, and then Bez Hashem will be able to give on Hilchos Kachim and Hilchos Tumah V'Tayro Lmaaseh now that Mashiach will be here. Now, Kapanim, when it comes to electricity and it comes to the shiloh of when electric current is connecting a fire, creating a fire, that's a different shiloh. Everyone agrees that would be a shiloh of deraisa. What we were discussing last week was the shiloh of electricity on its own. And what's the din of making an electric current on Shabbos? Where the Chazon Ish learns it's a nissa deraisa, to be buying it, to turn it off would be a nissa seiser, to turn off an electric current, for example, a fan, an air conditioning, etc. And Rosh Hashanah held it was a nissa derabanan. Today, Mitzvah Shem, what we're going to try to do is try to make applications of different electrical appliances and electrical zachen that we have, klape the shilos and Shabbos, whether it's motion detectors, whether it's the fridge, whether it's the combination shilos that come up, walking down the street, opening up an oven, all the different shilos that come up. And the truth is, a lot of the shilos we'll talk about, I must tell you, our case study is a bit difficult to give halacha l'maaseh on this topic, simply because every day the fridges change and the fridges are getting more advanced. And therefore, one that wants halacha l'maaseh on the topic has to make sure that the application of the halacha fits with what we spoke about. Like I always say from the Chazon Ish, that worse than a mistake in halacha is one makes a mistake in mitzias. So therefore, I'll make one big disclaimer today that the cases I'm talking about will be based on the types of either fridges I'm talking about or types of ovens that I'm talking about. And I'm going to say it Meiraish. A lot of the cases we're going to be talking about are old style fridges and old style examples, simply because that was what the Tshuva writers were writing about. I will, as we go along, discuss maybe some of the differences in our fridges and our ovens, et cetera, et cetera. But again, the ikar is to try to apply it, to apply as far as the grama, to apply as far as the ptikresha, and to mix it with the fact our appliances, is the electricity, is the shiloh of electricity, drabanan, deraisa, v'chule, v'chule. Okay, enough akdama. Now, I'll start with fridges. And again, and this is where the ikar disclaimer is on the fridges today. And this I'm going to actually be myrich for one moment. And I imagine if this is the reality of the fridges in America, in Eretz Yisrael, I imagine it's clearly the ritzias of the fridges in America. The old shiloh of the fridge, opening up the fridge door, assuming that you turned off the light switch, the old shiloh of the fridge, the machlekes between maybe Rav Shlomo Zalman, Rav Aaron, Rav Moshe, that was a very different shiloh, and that's what we'll talk about today. And we're using it as a case study to apply the rules of electricity to a case. Today's fridges, the new fridges that are made in the last few years, 10 years certainly, with the shilohs of digital fridges, etc., there are be'erich 4 or 5 problems that mechayev a Shabbos mode, which again, I can't get involved in the various modes and which one are good and which one are not, etc. And you should know there are some Shabbos modes out there which are absolutely not good. If you would come to Eretz Yisrael, I could definitely let you know which ones there are. For example, in Eretz Yisrael, there is an organization that takes care of a lot of the Shabbos issues. They're called Mishmeres Shabbos. Them you could certainly be Seimach on. There, I would say, of the bigger machmirim, and then you have of the shita. I guess it's the memutza is Rav Halpern, and he has maybe not as many shita, as many chumras as the shitas of the Mishmeres Shabbos. And then you have Summit, which the truth is, after I looked into there, I was quite shocked that when they take a fridge apart, the only thing they take care of is they disable basically the light, and all the other issues, which I'll mention in a moment, they don't take care of. Which means a person can be buying a fridge and it seems to have a hechsher from Summit on it, and he feels that, okay, I'm allowed to use this fridge in Shabbos. And I would say that, I suppose their poskim that disagree with what I'm saying, but all the poskim that everybody here has heard of, they certainly disagree. Now, the Lmaaseh, to make this practical, I'm sorry, somebody just tried to say something. Excuse me?
I didn't hear anything. No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so the Lmaaseh, I wanted to tell you the 4 or 5 problems that are in every time one has a new fridge, which is a digital fridge. The first problem is that the second you open up your door, just understand what's going on. The second you open up the door of your fridge is an incredible, incredible microcosm. The second you open up your fridge, there's an immediate counting that takes place for about 20 different purposes. One purpose is when you open up a fridge door, if it's going to be open for too long, an alarm is going to go off. And if one opens up a door, he'll realize that after 19 seconds, or depending on your fridge, all of a sudden an alarm is going to start beeping that your fridge is on. That takes place the second you open up your fridge. You activate that mechanism, which starts the counting. The counting enables the alarm. The counting enables to make sure that it doesn't have a defrosting problem. In many fridges that I saw today, the second you open the fridge, the fan that's in the fridge immediately goes off. The purpose being that the cold air should not go out. The fan, we don't want the cold air. So immediately when you're opening up a door, you are doing be'erech, if you don't have a proper Shabbos mode, be'erech, about 20 Chilul Shabboses, which are Ma'aseh Yadayim. This has nothing to do with the Shaila that Shlomo Zalman was discussing. This has nothing to do with the Shaila that Moshe was discussing. And we have absolutely no reason to believe that any of these great poskim would have been makel on opening up these fridges. And it's clear from their tshuvas that they would not, because all of the svaras that they're going to be discussing, which we'll discuss in a moment, are discussing grummas and shilas of psikrashas, etc. Here, when a person is opening up a door, he's opening up an entire system, which is, again, something we're not going to talk about. Therefore, you must make sure that first and foremost, if you have a new fridge, you have to realize this is not the old fridge shilah. All the people that used to open up fridges, or they waited till the fridge was on to open up the fridge, that has nothing to do with today's shilah. I'm not offering a psak. You should ask a local Orthodox rabbi. Maybe he'll tell you that he disagrees with what I'm saying. But it has nothing to do with the shilah that we're talking about. What is the shilah that we're talking about? The olden day fridges, which you'll see in a moment. It still has ramifications. And again, any of the products, any of the appliances that I discussed today, you have to make sure that they are conform with the discussion that we're having. Okay. The olden day fridges, the way they worked, the world was a lot simpler back then, Rabbi Isai. And there was a lot less depression in the world also, which I tell you. You opened up a fridge in the olden days, and the mitzias is that how are you going to get your fridge to stay nice and cold? So inside your fridge is a thermostat. A person opens up the fridge, all of a sudden the fridge, he gets nervous. Inside till now is nice and cool and everything is going great. All of a sudden, all that hot air from the outside, there's a difference of about 40 degrees or 50 degrees, even 60 degrees between the inside of the fridge and what's going on outside. So then all of a sudden the fridge gets very, very nervous. It's getting very hot in here. So the air rushes in. The hot air is rushing in. Now what happens when the hot air rushes in? Slowly, the fridge gets filled up with hotter air. And inside your fridge is a thermostat. The thermostat has knowledge to say that when it gets to a certain madrega, I have to start being muffled the motor, and we got to start pumping in more cold air. Okay, that's how your fridge works. The truth is, all the people that on Pesach, they say things like all the Pesach products go off. I can tell you a little secret: the Pesach products don't go off. What happens is people take their fridge and they line their fridge with paper, and okay, that's the minig. I also do it, but they don't give any air hose. So you take the paper, you line the fridge on the bottom shelf. Now, a lot of times the thermostat is found on the bottom shelf, or sometimes it could be found on the lower shelf or whatever. It could be sometimes on the top shelf. That's how it goes. So he has it lined on the top shelf. Now, what's going on? The thermostat, let's say it's on the top shelf. So the thermostat is very, very cold because since the paper blocks all the air which is coming out of the vent, it blocks it from going down to the bottom of the fridge. So now upstairs on the top shelf, freezing cold. So the thermostat says, okay, we don't need any more cold air. Now on the bottom of my side, it's boiling over there. It's like the Bahamas, Fragnish. At the bottom of the fridge is boiling. All the food over there is boiling away. And nobody cares about us because upstairs, everything is cool. So what you got to do, Rabbi Isai, your fridge has a brain, but the paper doesn't have a brain. You have to make holes in the paper, and then the air can go through The air will go through, and then it'll realize when it's hot down there, and it'll circulate. And the Mela, you won't have the food that'll go off on Pesach. But that's how a thermostat works, as you all know. The hot air comes in from outside, or sometimes even if you didn't open it, it constantly has to regulate the temperature and make sure that it's the proper temperature inside the fridge. So now in the olden days, you had two problems. You had a light in the fridge. Okay, that was easier by say everyone just either took out the light bulb or he turned off the switch. And if you have an olden fridge, which was from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I don't know the number, but if it's an olden age fridge, you took out the light. Now you have another problem. When I open up the door, the hot air rushes in. What happens? I'm now causing, by opening up the door, by saying, what does the Gemara Sanhedrin say? The Gemara Sanhedrin says that there's something known as a bid kedemaya. There's a person sitting on one side of a dam, and there's a plug over there inside the dam. A person that takes out that plug and allows for the water to go onto the person who's sitting there on the floor, and he kills that person. That's called a koyach rishon, if it's the first shwung of the water. And I was harnessing a koyach. When I remove that, I'm the one who's harnessing the koyach of the water. It's as if I'm pushing out the water onto this person, and it's as if I killed the person. Says the Gemara in Sanhedrin, I think on Davayin Zayin. That's a koyach rishon. Now think about it. When I open up the door, what am I doing? I am harnessing the koyach of the hot air, which is outside. I open the door, the hot air comes inside. Now that the hot air is inside, it goes, it makes this matzv. The thermostat wakes up and says, hey, it's boiling in here. And he turns on the motor. So is that mutter on Shabbos to open up a fridge door? That was the great Shiloh that was given by the Shlomo Zalman, the Hartzvi, our great Rebbe of Aaron Kallus, and that's the first Shiloh. Now I must tell you, similar Shiloh is how it works in a water machine. In the old-fashioned, whoever remembers, in the high school, in the cold water, the water fountain is a similar idea. Once you're taking out cold water, so then the water that's left inside there starts getting nervous, and then maybe you're causing that cold water, the water in there, to get the motor running to make it cold. The same thing Rabbi said with your oven, and I'm talking again about an old-fashioned oven, when a person with, an electric oven, that the person opens up, and I'm not talking about the new-fashioned ones that who knows every time you open up the door what's going on. But in the olden days, if you open up the door, so then now what's the difference in temperature? Inside there is 300, 400 degrees. Outside is about a 350 degree discrepancy. So now when you open up the door, it's the opposite. All that cold air rushes in that you were harnessing the koyach, allowed all of that cold air to rush in. Now the oven gets very nervous. So the thermostat there says, wait, it's too cold. And now the thermostat goes on to make it hotter in here. So is that called a Melechas Shabbos? Are you causing that? Is that a grama? Is that psik reisha? Is it lo'nichle? What is this? That was the big fight. Now, also we have to don how fast it takes for that hot air or cold air, depending which appliance we're talking about, how fast that air affects the thermostat. Does it happen immediately? Does it not happen immediately? This Rabbi Yisai says, Goyim v'shleim zalman in the Mincha Shleima. He actually is in Chelik Aleph Siman Yud. The Marmakim I sent to Oilam was in page 601, and the Ma'ariya Eish in page 629. And Rosh Shleim Zalman, the Goyin HaGadol, he writes, it's Pashit Ubar. Rabbi Yisai, that's a scary thought. That means that Kol HaTorah Kula just said something is Pashit Ubar. What is Pashit Ubar? It says, Goyim v'shleim zalman, Pashit Ubar. That when the Shach Manoya Nach, no, Rosh Shleim Zalman is discussing when the motor is off. Because if the motor is on, that's a whole different discussion. When the motor is on, Rabbi Yisai, maybe I'm not doing anything. Maybe I'm just not allowing for the motor to close. Let's think for a moment. Let's say I open up the fridge door when the motor's on. So now what happens when the motor's on? In comes all of that hot air and the motor's on. So now the motor says, I'm not going off. So all I'm doing is I'm just doing a prevention of a malacha to occur. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just preventing that a malacha should occur. I'm not doing anything to the malacha. You know what it's like to a certain extent? It's like a person that has wind, which is about to come and put out a fire. And he closes the window and doesn't allow for the malacha to occur. In essence, that's what I'm doing over here. The motor's on and I'm just not allowing for something to turn off that motor. Maybe that's not a malacha b'chlal. But says Rosh Zalman, what's the halacha when the motor's not on? Says the Goyin Bosh, Pashu Bar Shagam B'Shad, that the manoya is nach. When the manoya is off, ein shum shash of Nisatayra B'Simchas Adel. There's no shash of Nisatayra. And Pashit who believe shum pikbuk. There's no question that once you take out the light bulb, It's not nachem. Shlomo Zalman says it's not even right to be machmir and to not have Honig Shabbos and to wait till the motor is on to open up the fridge door. He says you shouldn't even wait. And he says, Mutter shopir liftoyach the Shabbos is adeles bekoles bekol shah. She hears a bain if the motor's on and bain if the motor's off. Now, what's the vart of Shlomo Zalman? If you look in the tshuva, the Shlomo Zalman is based on a few factors. Number one, what we spoke about last time. According to Shlomo Zalman, the issue that we're dealing with over here is a thermostat. Shlomo Zalman understands that issue is only an issue of a derabanan, because Shlomo Zalman understands that meikar adin electricity is derabanan. Even though last week we saw that Shlomo Zalman said you should be chayshish for the chazanish that electricity is deraisa, but Shlomo Zalman certainly has a big side that it's derabanan. I must tell you, derech hagav, in the new fridges, one of the major problems is that there's a defroster. And every time you open up the fridge door, you're enabling a defroster, which actually has a heating element, which even Shlomo Zalman would agree is a deraisa. But I'll go upon him. One shaila says Shlomo Zalman is the whole shaila at best might be a derabanan. Number one. Number two, which Shlomo Zalman goes on to discuss also the heating element inside the fridge, which is a little bit complicated. Then Shlomo Zalman goes on to say, what's taking place over here? When I open up the door, I told you that maybe that's considered a koyach rishon. Says Shlomo Zalman, that's not a koyach rishon. Koyach rishon is when you have our case, that the water right out of the dam goes straight onto the person and kills him. Here says Shlomo Zalman, the air comes in, it circulates, the thermostat has to think, and then after he thinks, he decides if he's cold, he decides if it's still hot, and maybe he will go on, maybe he won't go on, and certainly after a few moments, a few minutes, he will go on. So Shlomo Zalman, that's for sure a grama. That's not something that's direct. So for Shlomo Zalman, that's an indirect, and that's a grama. Is grama mutter on Shabbos? It says Shlomo Zalman, you look in Siman Shin Lamed Daled, and the halacha the Ramah brings down is that grama is aser l'chatchila and mutter b'makom hefsid, mutter b'makom chayli, mutter b'makom mitzvah. Says the Shlomo Zalman. Is any of the other derabbanans mutter b'makom hefsid? Do we ever say that you could just move muktzah b'makom hefsid? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, even a klisha malachta iser that we allow you to move, we don't allow you to move to prevent its hefsid. So we don't just allow things for hefsid. So what's going on here? That when you have a grama, you're allowed to do a grama b'makom hefsid. So Shlomo Zalman teaches us, and the Chazon Ish says the same thing in a different place. Grama on Shabbos is be'etzim mutter. We don't do grama lichatchila. Therefore, in a situation where you're not in a lichatchila dika situation, like hefsid, like mitzvah, like a chayli, so we're saying on grama. So that Shlomo Zalman says you have to know what grama is. Okay, so now we're dealing with a fridge, we're dealing with a grama, and we're dealing with a grama on a derabanan because maybe electricity is derabanan. So says Shlomo Zalman, but still we should maybe be machmir because it's not a hefsid, it's you say, wait till the motor goes on. Why not just wait till the motor goes on? And then for sure there's no issue. Said the guy Shlomo Zalman, but there's another issue. Am I doing a Lmaaseh b'yadayim over here? Or am I doing a einoi miskavin of a psik reisha? I'm opening the door to get my food. I'm not interested in the motor going on now. So what is it though? But whenever you open up the door, let's say it would vadai go on the motor, so then that would be considered a psik reisha. Okay, so there's Shlomo Zalman that first of all, is this a psik reisha? It's a psik reisha. Every time I open up the door, the motor goes on. It's not even a psik reisha. So what is it? It's an einoi miskavin. So the einoi miskavin is just mutter. So what's the whole entire issue over here? And even if you'll tell me, yeah, but it's karev to psik reisha, something that almost always it goes on. So he says, no, almost always it goes on. It certainly doesn't go on immediately. So karev to psik reisha. He says, okay, so but then you tell me, yeah, but I'm doing a grama. It's for sure going to eventually happen. So it's a grama of a psik reisha, something that not happens when I open it immediately, for sure. It happens after a few seconds, after a few minutes, maybe after a minute, it's going to happen. So that's not a grama of a direct grama of my kavana, what I'm trying to get. It's a psik reisha. Psik reisha b'grama, says Shlomo Zalman, that you can be make on. When you have a psik reisha, and Shlomo Zalman would say, is it echbaslei? Do you really care so much that the air should go on the second you open it? What do you care? You just want to get out your food. No, would you really care so much if it didn't turn on the thermostat now? It's Reisha, maybe it's Le'echbaslei, maybe it's Grama, says Shlomo Zalman, it's Mutter on Shabbos, and Ein L'mnaya. And this is also the psak of the great Dayan, Yisrael Yankee Fisher, the Morah Shabbos, in Chelik Gimel, the page 516. He says it's not a Shaila, it's only a Shaila. He wants to say it's maybe even a Lmaaseh, and therefore it's Mutter. The Tzitz Eliezer in Chelik Ches, and Siman Yud Beis in Ois Daled, He says these svaras that we just said, you can apply even to an oven. Now, if I said, what's the chiddush of an oven? There's two more chidushim in an oven that you just heard in the fridge. Number one, when you're dealing with an oven, you're dealing with a deraisa, because there the question is turning on a heating element. Right now, when you close it, assuming that the fire is not on. Some people have a fire that they see. They say have a red coil or a red light that tells them that the fire is on inside the oven. So let's say you know your oven, and right now the fire is off. And when you open up the oven, what's going to happen? The air is going to come in. It's going to go and tell the thermostat eventually to turn on the thermostat and to start up the heating Lmaaseh again. So some of the svaras don't apply. There, the shiloh is deraisa, because you're turning on a heating element. Everybody said, what's the difference between a fridge and a oven? About 300 degrees on both sides. So when I open up the oven door, he's going to get very cold very fast. When I open up the fridge door, it's not so much of a difference. Therefore, it's not something that happens as quickly. Afal Pikain, says the Tzitz Eliezer, even going on an oven, Taiti Maskemes, my das agrees with my friend, my Yedid Rishleim Zalman Orbach, Zeich Tzadik Levracha, that's mutter to open up a fridge, as long as, and also an oven, as long as the light has been taken out. And again, this is based on the above svaras. Number one, it's a grama. It's not something that happens immediately, and it's not something that happens with a direct hit to the thermostat. It takes time, even in the oven, to get into the oven. And then eventually, once it gets into the oven, it hits the thermostat, and then the thermostat has to think. Now, it's true by an oven, it's much more of a chance that it's going to happen immediately upon opening. But that might be either a carve of psik resha, which is a fight, or it might even be a suffix psik resha. Everyone here knows that a suffix psik resha means that I don't know the mitzvah is going on inside my oven right now. Is my oven at a point where it's cold enough that if I will machnis air right now, it's going to be too cold and go on immediately, or not? So what is that? That's a fact that I'm missing. That might not be ein miskaven. That's what's called in halacha a suffix psik resha. And suffix psik resha is a tremendous world war. And on that, the Mishabura says when you're dealing with suffix psik reshas of deraisas, you should be machmir. That's the Mishabura in Shinta Zayin, Hilchos Seda, and Bir Halacha. Brings a Ramban that's mekel. He says under abundance you can be mekel. Okay, but here it's maybe grama, and it's grama. Maybe it's a psik resha, maybe it's not a psik resha, maybe it's like nichale. You put all this together. These great places in this based in Agada, Rav Shel Yankiv and Dayan Fisher and Rav Aldenberg, the Tzitz Eliezer were mekel to open up a fridge and to open up an oven, even when it wasn't going. Even when it wasn't going. Now, Lmaaseh, the tshuva of Rav Aaron Kallus, Eichel Tzadik Levracha, and Chelik Aleph and Siman Dalid. I'll just read you what he says, and then we'll try to explain what's going on here. Sidadi, I was mitzaded, Rav Aaron Zechron Levracha, lesor. I came out at Sad to Aser closing the fridge on Shabbos, and he says that creates a kiboy ma'at. And lo yamarti as aser behechlet. I'm not sure if I'm going to aser behechlet. Rav Aaron says, El amarti shetzarich iyin bezeh v'yesh lachash lechatchila. And then I say, says Rav Aaron, tzarich levar yoser mitzias advarim. You have to look into it. And ad shivar, until you find out, I don't say aser, I don't say heter. But davar psichas the fridge, but to open up the fridge, I say it's aser for two reasons. And then I came out that it's aser to open a fridge. That's Rav Aaron. Interesting. It's known that Rav Aaron Kallus wasn't afraid of anything, but it seems he was afraid of a fridge. It's interesting also. Who fights here on Rav Aaron is Yisrael Yankiv Fisher. They say that when Rav Aaron came to Yerushalayim and Rav Zalman Ishver was mechabed him to say the shir in Eitz Chaim, so all the gedolim of the future door were there listening to the shir. Rav Shlomo Zalman was there, Rav Eliashiv was there, all the gedolim, and everybody was afraid of Rav Aaron, who would speak up in the shir. There was one Jew in the shir that would speak up, and he would say his piece. If he wanted to fight with Rav Aaron, he fought with Rav Aaron. That was Yisrael Yankiv Fisher. Very interesting. Over here, Rav Aaron says it's aser. And Yisrael Yankiv Fisher says it's him, it's passion, it's mutter. So same old fighting, same old fighting in Torah fish nights. No, Lmaaseh, what's the psak of Rav Moshe Zechron Levracha? That's what everybody wants to know. Anybody? So Rav Moshe Lmaaseh, very, very difficult to figure out what Rav Moshe's psak is. Ramosha and Orach Chaim in Chelik Beis Siman Samaches. A very cryptic message over here of Moshe. Very interesting. Ramosha has truths about everything in the world. Yet over here, Ramosha says, "Ube'etzim psichos hamakarer in mutter yesh b'zeh dvarim harbe." He says there's a lot what to talk about. There's a lot what to talk about. Ube'etzim psichos, there's a lot what to talk about. He says, but Hagoyin Rav Henkin already answered, right? Sheyiftechu b'shasha motor high. Look, you should only open it when the motor's on. And this Rav Henkin is taka found in the Eidos Yisrael on Daf Kuf Yutes, where he says, "If it's mutter, if the motor's on, it's mutter, and if not, he says, it's better to be machmir and not to open it up." It's interesting. That's in one tshuva and a different tshuva. Yesh love in the Rav Henkin, but Al Kapana Rav Moshe is very interesting. Over here, Rav Moshe, who had a tshuva about everything, but he heard that Rav Henkin answered, and then you get the feeling from Rav Moshe that if Rav Henkin already answered, he doesn't want to go into it. The Kain Toiv Linoi, the Ein Laharich V'Zebik Sav Yoiser. Rav Moshe doesn't want to discuss it. I wonder what the pshat is. Interesting idea. Again, in Orach Chaim Chelik Aleph Siman Kuf Kav Ches at the end. Ubedavar Psichos Afridge. Any right to Hashiv. Kiyesh Tam and Lakan. There's different discussions, and it's Yadua that Rav Henkin already answered. The Meshul Hasig Mashinka Shaita Shleya Shum Fas Halavida should make freezers and frigidaires which don't have any problems. Ramosha. That's very interesting. A little piece of our history over here in the Art Scroll book. The Shabbos kitchen, he brings down at the end over there, he brings down in a HaRav that he says from Rav Moshe, Mutter Levtoyach Delos HaMakarim. You're allowed to open up a fridge door even when the motor's not going. The King Shemati Mipi Agoyin Rav Moshe finds it. I heard it from his mouth. I guess you have to ask Rabbi Cohen from Lakewood. He says, a guy that is his chuvas, he's machmir. I guess something was going on. Maybe Rav Moshe held that it's already known from Rav Henkin that Rav Henkin was machmir on the Shaila. So Rav Moshe didn't want to go against the Henkin of the Gdolei Poskim. Interesting when Rav Moshe did decide to go against the Henkin and when not. I'll put it by fridge. Rav Moshe didn't want to go against. What are the svaras to argue? So I'll tell you what I heard from Rav Eliashiv. And the truth is, Rav Aaron touches on this. Rav Aaron Kayadua is a very difficult tshuva and a very long tshuva. The svaras that are here, Rabbi Isai, is that it's very not pashit in halacha to say that when you're opening up a fridge door that that's considered a grama. Now there's a big yisoid, Rabbi Isai, in Hilchos Shabbos that you find Davkav in all places, but you find it in the Gemara Baba Kama and Daf Samech. And that's a yisoid. It could be mentioned it over here. I'm sure the bigger Talmidei Chachamim, or the real Talmidei Chachamim that spoke to you already previously have discussed these in Yonim, that there are certain rules in Hilchos Shabbos, sometimes the Kula and sometimes the Chumrah, based on the concept of Meleches Machshavos. Meleches Machshavos means that when I'm doing a Malach on Shabbos, it has its own certain rule book. It has to be done b'dafka, and it can't be, obviously not misasek, and it can't be mekalko and whatnot. But you should know, Rabbi Isai, when a person picks up a pitchfork and throws it up what he does with winnowing, and he throws up in the air, and the chaff falls away, and the comes down the hard stuff, the pebbles and whatnot. So l'chayra, why isn't that grama? He's using the air, he's using the wind, and the wind is what's doing everything. So there's a big insight in the Gemara Baba Kama Daf Samech that that's the normal tsuras hamalacha, so then that's not considered. That's the meleches machshavos. That's how I do zoil. That's not considered a grama. If that's the tsura of the malacha, that's the normal way of doing a malacha. That's not going to Seda. The Rambam talks about a person being tzad animals, and he talks about sending out dogs to catch. Why is that not grama? Because that's the tsura of the normal way that you do the malacha. That's not the svara grama. Grama is when something is not the normal way. There's a famous Evan Heiser. He's talking about a grinding mill, a water mill, and he talks about how you put in the stuff into the water mill, and it takes time until it gets to the place where it actually grinds, and you're the one that places it in. He said that could be a malacha, be a dayim mamish. It takes time. Taking time is not a chesaron in Melechas Shabbos. It takes time to cook also. When you take a pot and you put it on the fire, does it cook immediately? No. Why is that not a grama? Because you're placing it in the place where eventually it's going to cook, and that's the tzuras of malacha. So therefore, it could be that when you have a system, says the Rav Eliashiv, this is based on Rav Chaim Moiser and the famous Trubin Yachiezer. When you have a system that is set up to bedafka have the result based on what you're putting in or placing in, like when you have a fridge, it was made a system that when you should open up the door, every time you open up the door, the thermostat should have to think, and the air should decide if it's the thermostat should decide if it's too cold in here, if it's too hot in here. That's a system. Now, it's true that's not maybe the normal way of turning on a fan or maybe turning on a thermostat or this. But if that became a normal way of having an electric reaction in a fridge, that's a normal way of how thermostats work. So then it could be that, like I'm seeing over here, maybe that's a machlokes Magen Avraham Even Ozer, or maybe not, right? Maybe over here, everybody could agree because this is the only way how thermostats work. So maybe that's not called a grumble. There's a lot more that one could say about this, but that's why Rav Elyashiv held this is not called a grumma. This is the system that you set up to enable a thermostat to be working. If that's the system, that doesn't go into the parsha of grumma. Now the only parsha that you get into is it a psikresha or not? Okay, no. How could you say psikresha? Psikresha is also. It's a psikresha on a Lmaaseh b'yadayim. If you know that every time you open up the fridge, it's going to eventually 2 seconds, 3 seconds, turn it on, and that's the system, and that's not considered a grumma. So then psikresha is also. What are you going to say? Psikresha the loy nichale? First of all, says Rav Elyashiv, why is that loy nichale? It's very nichale. You want your fridge to have this system because you want it to work. Why do you want your fridge to have cold air? You want your food to be cold constantly, and you are very happy it should be cold. So therefore, Rav Elyashiv held that you're not allowed to open up the fridge, and this is maybe what Rav Henkin was holding, and maybe Rav Moshe was holding, at least to be chayshish for Rav Henkin. They held that this is not considered grumma, and therefore it's a regular psikresha, and maybe even nichale. And if you hold electricity deraisa, so therefore it's a psikresha the nichale on a deraisa. So therefore they held that the only time you can open up a fridge is when the motor is going, because when the motor is going, you're not doing anything. You're just not allowing for the motor to go off. You're causing the motor to remain on. You're not doing anything. Now, I must tell you, Maimar Musgar, I'll tell you something here, which is unbelievable chumras in this parasha. The Chut Shani brings down in the 199th page of Chut Shani, he brings down something unbelievable. He says, when the motor's off, that's a chash deraisa. Okay, in Bnei Brak, that's for sure a chash deraisa, because electricity is deraisa. He says, because what's going to happen? You're going to open it up and it's going to cause the motor to go on. He said that's koyach rishon, that's not a grumma. Okay, like we spoke. So it says, he says, the Peldik Lmaaseh. He says, we're going to make a gzera atu psicha samekarer kisheina poil. Nissen says that you have to make a gzera and you have to make sure that you don't open up a fridge atu psicha samekarer when it's not going on. He says you make a gzera. Now, I didn't understand this gzera. And then I looked around and I saw something very incredible, mamish incredible, that they bring down from Reb Chaim Kanievsky. V'amarli Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Shemar and Akilas Yankiv, the Stiper, Atzmai was Makel. He used to open up a fridge. But he saw that Chazanish was, because Kevin Shach Chazanish, Rakit Milatzmai, V'loi Karo L'Rabim, the Lmaaseh Mutal of Toichas and Mekarer, Kishamanei Apoyel. You see over here in Bnei Brak, the only nidin was, could you open up a fridge when the motor's on? And did they make a gzera that you can't open up a fridge even when the motor's on? And the chiddush of Reb Chaim Kanievsky was that the stipler was makel to open up a fridge when the motor was on. That means that Reb Nissen and the Chaim are saying the Chazanish had an incredible chumrah here. He didn't open a fridge on Shabbos even when the motor was on. This gzera that you might come to open it when the motor's off. That's how bite. That's how afraid they were of it. Okay, it seems this wasn't Torah Rabbim. Okay, Lmaaseh Rabbi. That's the shaila. If somebody wants to know, so what's Lmaaseh in the old fridges? Certainly, when the motor is on, the halacha is it's mutter. When the motor is off, so Lmaaseh, there's a very interesting Igros Moshe, and the Olam has to figure out what to do with this Igros Moshe. The Igros Moshe. If I would ask you now, what's the din of an oven? If you're going to ask Rav Moshe, you're allowed to open up an oven door. So we would expect that Rav Moshe would say, look, for sure, if I'm not going to let you open up a fridge door lechatchila, I'm certainly not going to let you open up an oven door lechatchila. Yet, you look in Rav Moshe and Chelik Dalid and Simonai Dalid and Bishul Ois Ches. Those were short tshuvas to Rav Eider. Okay, he writes tanurim that have a thermostat, a thermostat. Hayim mutal of toyach delas at tanur b'Shabbos. Now, if anything, Rav Moshe is supposed to write that this is for sure worse of a shaila than the shaila of a fridge, like we explained, because here there's much more of a chance that the second you open up the door, the air is going to cause the thermostat to go on. So they asked Rav Moshe, Nira, it's not a psikresha. Because because it's not muchach. So it should be an Eina Miskaven. He wants to know it's just a regular Eina Miskaven and it should be mutter. Tshuva, Kafia Nira, ain't Sigration. Fudavar, Shin Mistavi. They ain't lesser. Now, how does that stem with Moshe with the fridge Shiloh and the oven Shiloh? How does that stem? The only thing I was thinking, I don't know if you could say this. Maybe you'll tell me if you could say this. The only thing I was thinking is it seems to be where Moshe Ben Mizal, Bain the fridge, Bain the oven, it's all mutter. Where Moshe Ben Kanira held, it's not a Psikresha, and it's considered a grama, that which it happens after a time. It's not considered your Maisa. And therefore, Moshe probably held that it was mutter. And so it would be like a grama of Psikresha. Moshe said to be Choshesh for a Penkin. Yeah, because Penkin said it. So the Welt in America, I guess in the 50s and the 60s, they all know you don't open a fridge. Rav Henkin said you don't open a fridge. I guess nobody spoke to Rav Henkin about an oven, or at least the shmoo in the street was not that Rav Henkin holds you can't open it up in oven unless the light's on, unless the fire's on. So the Mela, where the shmoo of Rav Henkin was, that's where the Welt, that's where Moshe wanted to be machmer. But the Mr. Moshe, like you saw in the Art School book, he says that you're allowed to open up a fridge. Elamai, Rav Henkin said not to open up a fridge. No. So Rav Henkin said not to open a fridge. He doesn't want to be going around telling people they can open a fridge. But the lumdis for Moshe that was mutter, where's the nafkamina in an oven? Because an oven is mutter. Because in the Welt they don't say it, and I hold it's mutter. So maybe that's the yishuv of Moshe. I don't know. Now, kapanim la halacha, you see clear that an oven is worse than a fridge, and that Moshe was willing to be make on. So the stomach hagama ovens is shiloh deraisa, and hagama ovens is shiloh that the fire goes on much quicker. The Mafa Pekin Moshe was mako. So certainly there's a bucket to be mako by a fridge. Okay, somebody's still living in the world of Rav Henkin, Zeichet Tzadik with Bracha, the great Paisik of America. He wants to be machmer, Tavala bracha, Mastam will get a bracha, no shaila, and he'll just wait till the motor is on. Me, myself, no, I got one of the new fridges. So because I got one of the new fridges, I had to get the Mishmeres of Shabbos guys to come down and take apart and put in a Shabbos mode. No, so that Shabbos mode takes care of all the problems. Okay, that's a Baisai, Lagabi the fridges. Lagabi the fans, again, our starting point is, and then we're discussing a fan. Are we discussing Deraisa, Derabana, and Machlekes, Chazim, Yishur, Shlemazah? What's a Shiloh fan? And this intrigued me. I always heard that there's people that say that you can't pick up that chupchik. I don't know what that thing is called. That little chupchik to make the fan go this way and this way. Not because of muksa. Mitzad muksa, your fan is a klisha malachta iser, which is mutter l'tzarech kufay l'tzarech mekaymai. So let's say you wanted to oscillate. That's a tzarech kufay. So mitzad muksa, that's not an issue. Mitzad, let's say it's bothering me because you're in a room and the fan you don't want on you, so you want to turn it away from you, or you want to pick up the chupchik so that it shouldn't be on you. That's its soyrich hamokim. It's moving the smokim. Derech agav, Ramesh has it sad that a fan is a klisha machtal a heter when it's on because it's doing a davar mutter, but I don't want to go into that now. But I always heard that forget the muksa problem. Without the muksa, you'd be allowed to pick up the chupchik to make it go or to make it stop or whatever. But there's a different shiloh. I always heard there's a shiloh that you're changing an electric current. And since you're changing an electric current, so then that'll be a shiloh of chashmal. You're causing a change in the current. What would be the idea? Why would you be changing the current? I'm not an electrician. I don't know. But I did look around today and I saw that Taka, they're bringing the Koibitz based Levi in Chelik Vav in the 47th page in Eitzches from Shevet Levi. But we'll see in a moment, had very big coolers when it came to certain electrical appliances. He says, Ein l'shanais, you're not allowed to change the kivun, the direction of the fan, the navrer, by picking up the chupchik, right? Because you're causing a shinui in the amount of electricity which is going. That's what he writes. The Mishnah Lachas, that's Reb Menashe Klein, in Chelik Yud Aleph, in the 272nd tshuva, 273rd tshuva, he says a fan is lanias daiti. It's not pashit. Hamisu ayidei. When you pick up that thing, it causes more electricity to be going. When Mamela, it has no heter. It's either causing more or less. I guess it depends on the fact that in this area now that it has to move and the area has to be pushing air all over. I'm not the electrician, but in the Shritz Yitzchak, he explains it in Chelik Vav in the 168th page. He brings from Rabbi Yashiv. He says to make any change in the fan is a problem of moilid because you require more electricity to be coming And the Igros Moshe told us you have to worry about that. He brings here the Igros Moshe. Remember last time we spoke about when a person talks on the phone on Shabbos, that he has a chiyuv to call someone because of a pekuch nefesh. Is he allowed to say hi? Is he allowed to say bye? Is he allowed to add extra words? So Shlomo Zalman said it's no problem because the current is already made. And Rav Moshe said, no, that's not true because each and every word is causing a different amount of the current to go through. And then he writes that therefore it's us. And I must tell you, I talked today to a person who's actually a little bit of an expert in these Yanim. I must admit, I didn't fully understand it, but kafi what I understood, if you are going to be machmir on this shaila of the oscillating fan, you're also not going to be allowed on Shabbos to stand in front of a fan and not to be near a fan, because it seems to be that when you stand in front of a fan, it's the same, or you're also not going to be allowed to move it, forgetting the oscillating, you're not going to be able to turn the fan the other way, because it seems to be that when a person moves the fan, there's vice versa. Sometimes in this area, it's working harder. It's a different level of air it has to be pushing out. And when I'm standing in front of a fan, it has to now push more because I'm blocking. So now it has to work harder. And when I walk away, it has to work less. Now, I don't at all have knowledge in this, right? But that chum I never heard of ever. that chum I never heard of. So Elamai, what do you have to say? You have to say what Goyim Shlomo Zalman said in the Shulchan Shleima in Shimches and HaRav Lamed. He says it's mutter to change all of the directions and to do the oscillation and everything. And he says, you know what? Even if it does have, he says it's so little. And it's not something that anybody's margish, and that a little amount is not considered nechshav in Yisurim. I'm sorry, that's far from a god lador, right? Ubefrat, he says it's only a grama. He has a lot of other svaras over there. I mean, the truth is, Rabbi Yisai, is you have to keep in mind this is all going only l'chayra to the chashash of Rav Moshe. The fear of Shlomo Zalman, once the current is made, so then there's no more potential problem of noilad. And that's why l'chayra on this shaila, one could actually be makel. I'm seeing that I was sent a chat. Maybe just send it back, because if someone's trying to explain to me how this works, I'd love to know myself. Oh, an escalator, a Shabbos elevator, we'll talk about in a moment. Yeah, we'll talk about it in a moment. Now, the famous shaila is the shaila of the protection videos and motion detectors. And I guess we have to be makir toy to the Shevet HaLevi in Chelik Yud and Siman Samech Leis Aleph. He's the father of this entire Indian, where the Shevet HaLevi told us why you're allowed to walk down. When the Shevet HaLevi wrote this 20 years ago, who believed what would be today? But the Shevet HaLevi writes that when you're walking down the street, and as a result of you walking down the street, sometimes a light goes on, sometimes a motion detector goes on, sometimes a video camera goes on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the Shevet HaLevi is the Av L'Kulam on the Kulas over here. The Shevet HaLevi over there says that being that, and this is a big study, Klape Meleches Machshev is what we spoke about. He says not everything is mugder as a Ma'aseh Malacha. Let me explain. If I say if you go to an automatic door and you stand right by the door to open the door, that the Shevet HaLevi and everybody agrees that's called Ma'aseh B'Yadayim, because that's a Ma'aseh Muvak of opening the door. That's how you open the door. By standing over there, you open up the door. There's actually a shaila we didn't get a chance to talk about. What happens if a Jew opened the Be'isser? Are you allowed to go in? Is that a Ma'aseh Shabbos? No, that we can be makel that it's not a Ma'aseh Shabbos because it's just a siluk. He's not doing something positive. It's just a removal. Okay, interesting idea. Interesting idea. Maimar Musgar. Somebody asked me a shrekul chashayla, but the oilam over here that learned Ma'aseh Shabbos, they'll have enough from the shayla, not from unfortunately the case. But there was a person who asked me just now after Shabbos. He asked me that his father's not religious, and his father came to him on Shabbos, and before his father left, he wrote him a check, and he left it on the counter. And he wanted to know, is he allowed to use the check? His father wrote it on Shabbos. No. So I told him, my guys that learned the Sukkos and Ma'aseh Shabbos, they're going to know it. The answer is the Mishnah Berurah says that when a person does a Ma'aseh, even for you, even b'shviloi, mevashel b'shviloi, if he does it for you, it's only us for him, but for the person he does it for, it's mutter. And we don't ask her. So Motzi Shabbos, you can go to the bank. Okay. I guess depends how big the check is. But when it comes to the motion detectors and the videos and all these things, the cameras, etc., So when I go bidafka to open a door, and that's the Maisa muvak of door opening, that's of course a Maisa bidayim, and that's a vada. Everyone's going to agree that that's us. But Rabbi Isai, when I go to walk down the street, and I'm b'chlal not thinking about what's going on around me, maybe says the Shevet HaLevi, that doesn't have a shame of a Meleches Shabbos b'chlal. That's just the memela uftu of my action. What's my action right now? My action is walking. As a result of my action, malachas occur. Again, let's understand. If I walk there because I want the light to go on and I walk to turn on the light, that's called your Lmaaseh, that's bikavana. But here, I'm just walking. What are you doing? In Hilchos Shabbos, we want to know, what are you doing? The guy's walking, things go on all around him, lights go on all around him, etc. He says that's even less than a misasik, says the Shevet HaLevi. I'll read you his lashon, the beautiful words of the Shevet HaLevi. He wants to say this is not dumia to any case of the Mishkan. This is what we explained before. And sometimes Melechas Machshavas could create a chumrah. Sometimes this is not considered a malacha b'chlam. It's an action that occurs as a result of something that I'm a regular action that I'm doing. Let me give you his lashon. Said the Shevet HaLevi. He says, you asked this question, but when was this Shaila in Nogeya and Eretz Yisrael? 25 years ago in the hospitals. When you come in there, there's a camera that takes a video of you. There's a camera. In Yesh Yisr, is there an Issa for the Chayla to go in, or to somebody who's visiting? It takes a picture. He's not doing anything in a Maisa. He's doing his everyday normal action. Even if he would know or without his kavanah, it would happen. Like door openings and all these things. That's not a deraisa. The Torah never asked in and he brings down that's not doimik kamuvan lamalacha grura. It's not even maybe it's a drabanan. He says, okay, but look, it's a psikresha. It's a psikresha. He's just walking. Deloy nichale. He's not interested. On a drabanan. And he says, in many cases, he's makel. Now, there's a very, very famous Ran Rashba in the laws of Seder, in Hilchos Seder. This has a similar idea that a person closes his door and there happens to be a deer there and he considers it to be mutter. It's the same idea that when a person is doing his regular actions, his regular, normal, everyday actions, and something happens memela as a result, so then we are able, we have the little bit of the leeway over here to say that's not called as Maisa. This is related to Lmaaseh, but even more than Lmaaseh. And the Maisa, like I'm being asked over here, if you're not going to go with this Malach, you cannot walk into the old city on Shabbos. I mean, there's more motion detectors going on over there because of the security reasons, etc. Than where you guys are from. Now, Maisa, this was the psak also of Dayin Padva in Ched Gimel, Siman Pei Gimel. Everybody has their nusach of how they say it. And the truth is, Rabbi Isai, the best is if you don't know. The more you don't know, the better you are. And if you're with somebody walking and he doesn't know, that's even better. Because then it might be considered, like we explained before, a soft-baked sigresha. When I'm walking down the street and I don't know, there's a motion detector, So then in every step, it's a yediyah that you're lacking. You can have that yediyah, it's there already. That's called a suffix sigresha l'sha'avar. The knowledge is there already. You just don't know it. What's the din of a suffix sigresha l'sha'avar? Let's see. If you consider all these things, motion detectors, etc., all this electricity, most of these things are only LED lights, etc., and it's only a shiloh of not incandescent lights. So then, according to Shlomo Zalman, the shilohs again got knocked down to maybe the Rabbanan. Okay, once we got knocked down to the Rabbanan, we can be saimech on the Shevet HaLevi Svar. We can be saimech it's a psikresha l'nichale. We can be saimech maybe it's a psikresha l'sha'avar on the Rabbanan. You put that all together. The best is if you don't know. Definitely don't tell the guy next to you, hey, on this block, everywhere there's motion detector. If he doesn't know, it's better he doesn't know. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Okay. Now, the Lmaaseh, excuse me, it's important to know, Rabbi Isai, when you're dealing with incandescent is the Isa. When you're dealing with fluorescent, The starter is also deraisa. The LED lights, that it seems to be, don't have the same issue as the original thing, and that would be the machlekes for Shlomo Zalman and the Chazon Ish, if that's the Rabbanan, or if that is deraisa. Now, excuse me, excuse me. Interesting, the gabe, the shilas of elevators. So it's interesting. Rav Moshe has a truth about this in Chelik Beis Siman Tzadi Hey. Ubedover likonis beelevator. I guess it's an elevator in Yiddish. B'Shabbos v'Yom kishenichnas adam rasha l'tzorich atzmai. It's interesting. Rav Moshe they do all over the Igros Moshe. Moshe doesn't consider most of the people over there to be Tinach Shenishba. It's interesting. It's one of the things that Rav Moshe, I don't want to call it Chomer Kula, but Rav Moshe had different shitas that, I don't know how many people would have, again, I don't know what's considered the Chomer and the Kula, but the Chazon Ish considered most of the people that weren't religious, he considered them to be Tinach Shenishbas. Rav Moshe considered them to be Taka Rasha. That's why you'll find that a lot of the Chuvas, Rav Moshe writes with this very, very strong Russian. Ubedover likonis beelevator, b'Shabbos v'Yom tov kishenichnas adam rasha l'tzorich atzmai aser. He went in there. He says you can't go into the elevator with a rasha, and he's going to take you up. That's considered you're getting a nav and Ma'aseh Shabbos. That you can't do. But kishenichnas a guy, let's say a guy goes in an elevator with tzorich atzmai, he goes in for himself. Obviously, if the guy, is a doorman, and you come into the elevator and he presses the button for you, of course that's aser. He's doing it for you. He's giving you a na, and whether elevators are Rabbanan deraisa, it doesn't make a difference. It's a Ma'aseh that a guy is doing for you. Amir Lakim is aser. Shvus is aser. Okay. Aval, he says, what if a guy does it for you, for himself? The guy goes in the elevator, and now you want to just go in there and hop a ride. So Moshe says, Batsim, it's mutter. Aval aser mishum marasayim. It's a marasayim. People are going to think that you told the guy to press the button. Then he says, elevator. I talked to the people that understand the electronics of an elevator. Because when you go into the elevator, it adds electricity. Then he goes on, he says, if he's known as a Yerushalayim, it's also maybe a Chil Hashem. You see that Rav Moshe wasn't so into a person going into an elevator. Number one, he's worried about the Chil Hashem, and he's worried about the Amir La'akum, and he's worried about the change in the electric current. Now, you take that to a Shabbos elevator, okay, so we don't really have the Chil Hashem, and we certainly don't have the Amir La'akum. I guess for Moshe Shitasa, and Moshe didn't hold so much of Shabbos clocks and whatever, I guess that too. But I guess if we were done, the Shiloh, so one just needs to know what's going on today in the Shabbos elevators. Are they in the olden days, the nusach, what I read you the lashon of the excuse me, I'll just say it out loud. In the olden days, the nusach used to be that to go up in the elevator is no problem because there's a certain strength that it has, and it doesn't matter what you're doing to it. Mashain came to going down, that depends on your weight, and therefore it goes either it weighs you, etc., and that you are causing a change in the level of the current. That was in the olden days. They used to say you can go up in the elevator, but you can't go down in the elevator, and the Shabbos elevator. I must tell you, everybody, that Lmaaseh, it's a very not pasha to say it. You look into it today, and it does seem to be that there is a change in the current. They ain't going up, they ain't going down. Me, myself, the way I understand is that it would be totally in the machlekes Rav Moshe and Shlomo Zalman, that Rav Moshe would hold, like we mentioned many times already, that any change in the current is a problem. And that is the Metzias seemingly today, that whether you're going up, whether you're going down in the Shabbos elevator, you are causing less or more of the flow of electricity. And Rosh Hashanah would hold that such a thing is mutter. Okay, if somebody wants to be studying on the Shabbos elevator based on that, certainly a woman that's having a hard time walking, she's pregnant, or etc., older people, certainly there's a malkum to be makel, right? But like everything today, everybody say, when you get a Shabbos elevator, it has to be a Shabbos elevator that was approved with the proper hashgachas. There are elevators that are considered just automatic elevators, which clearly, according to everybody, are changing the actual current. There could be an entirely different current based on the weight in the elevator. And that's totally in the sugya of Papa Ba'aba that all of us remember from Yeshiva and Baba Kama and test. If you're the one who's causing that, if you're not the one who's causing that. So Lmaaseh Tachlis, if a person's in an elevator that has a proper Shraga, a Shabbos elevator, so then he has to know that according to Rav Moshe, it still probably might be a problem. According to Shlomo Zalman, it is mutter. I looked into today an escalator. It seems to me an escalator has no change at all in your being on it or not. I found that to be very interesting. The only thing I can tell you about an escalator is maybe somebody will come along and say that it's a zilus of the Shabbos. But that's not for me to say. That's for Anoshim Gedolim to decide if that's considered a zilus of the Shabbos. I'll stop for 2 minutes early so that I could be able to talk to the Oilam and the Shilas. I saw there were a lot of Shilas, and I want to be able to talk to the Oilam. I just mentioned one thing, that if a person has his electricity goes off on Shabbos, and he has a situation where they had to get the guy to come to turn on the light, what would be the case? The kids are scared of the dark, so the guy you want to get a guy to turn on the light. But in order for the guy to come and turn on the light, he has to just turn on the main switch. Now, as a result of the guy turning on the main switch, so everything's going to go on, right? The hot plate and this and that, and lights that you don't need, and et cetera, et cetera. So you should know, based on what we said today, that's psikresha, but psikresha by Amir La'akum, Mishabura is a big shaila about it, and sounds like it's a makom to be makel. And therefore, if you tell the guy to just, if you tell the guy, I need you to turn on the light, I need you because my lights went out, and he's turning on the main, and you told him because of the light, which you had a heter for, because your child is scared, which has a din of a chayla, whatever. So now all the other things that go memela, that gets involved in this week's sugya, that gets involved in last week's sugya, and that gets involved in the sugya of the Rebbe Shurim that we spoke about 2 weeks ago. And there might be a heter in such a case. No, that you have to ask the local Orthodox rabbi. I tell him there might be a heter in such a case. Now I'm going to answer Bez Hashem if there's any shilas.